If you are here early, you can go ahead and print the printouts or the, the handouts. They're actually copies of the slides, and some of these do get kind of detailed, and I'm sure you're going to want to take notes. So please do make sure that you have a pen, you close all your other windows, and you're going to want to focus for the next hour on sales presentations, because there is almost nothing more important than that. All of the marketing that we do and everything else, it leads up to sales presentations. So if you are not doing those right, you can waste all of the rest of your time and energy and effort and everything else, and it's very sad. So let's not do that, right?
Sad, huh?
Exactly. So today's webinar is about sales presentations. And although we had talked about, in the syllabus and other things, making this about in-person sales presentations, after some input from our members and others, we've decided to make this also pertain to teleconference presentations. So we'll be talking about both today, and that will be fantastic. So welcome, we're glad you're here. This will be fun. So this webinar is for you if any of the following are true. One, you sell something in the aviation industry, or something closely related to the aviation industry. It might be, business to business, high ticket, complex sales, those kinds of things. This is not about selling snow cones or candy bars. This is about selling things that are a little more complex than that. If you do in-person sales presentations, this is also for you. If you attend trade shows, now what is a trade show? A trade show is just kind of a series of small sales presentations, right?
Exactly.
Okay. And also, if you do teleconference sales presentations, now a lot of us have been doing a lot more of that in recent years than we did prior to that, which is just fine. So these things happen, right?
And there's a good quote from Mr. Lappin.
Rabbi Daniel Lappin, he's a pretty famous writer in the finance industry, which is kind of cool.
Unless you're a tenured professor or a Supreme Court justice, you are by default in sales.
Exactly. So we might as well get good at it, right?
Yeah, sure.
If we all have to do it, we might as well all get good at it. So speaking of such things, are we selling something on this webinar?
Well, I certainly hope so.
Exactly. The point of these free webinars, we are in a for-profit business. So our reason for doing free webinars is to attract more clients for our own products and services. So the last 10 or 15 minutes of this webinar, we will be making a special offer that will be of value to you if you enjoy the webinar. And if not, you'll have an idea of that you probably don't want to be doing business with us, which is fine too. So you're welcome either way. We're really glad to have you. If you're a current client, we're also very welcome. We're also very glad to have you as well. The more you learn about sales presentations, the better for everyone in the whole darn industry, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So with that said, I'm Paula Williams.
And I am John Williams.
And we are ABCI, and ABCI's mission is
to help each and every one of you folks out there sell more stuff in the aviation industry.
Exactly, and that includes both marketing and sales. So, all the marketing in the world is not going to help you if you trip on your sales presentations, right?
Exactly.
In fact, that's happened with some of our clients. We've done some really good marketing, had a lot of leads coming in, had really good follow-up programs, really good referral programs, and other kinds of things. But their weak spot was their sales presentations, right?
Or lack thereof.
Or lack thereof. Right. So, it's one of those things that some people just really feel a little weird about and try to avoid. I'm one of those people. Don't tell anybody, right? Except our closest friends on the webinar, right? Okay. So I have an allergy to sales, or at least I have had in the past. I currently struggle with an attitude that comes from, I'm going to say, my father, who was not really into sales guys, we'll put it that way, who thought that sales and marketing was kind of not the most noble of professions and so on. So my response to that was to give too much information. I thought of myself as a teacher rather than a salesperson. And I thought, okay, I'm okay. I am a respectable human being because I'm not really doing sales. I'm just doing teaching and so on. So every time we would do a webinar or every time we would do a sales presentation or anything else, I would give way too much information and overwhelm people and have them walking away going, wow, well, that was nerdy. I'm not sure how it applies to what I should be doing. So we did really, really good marketing, but really, really lousy sales presentations until we figured this out. So the solution to this for me was to simplify our message, especially in sales presentations. And that's, if there is one thing that we'll be talking about today, is how to simplify your message down to the one thing that you want your customers to walk away with at the end of that presentation. So that is our story, and we're sticking to it, right?
So what you're saying is you need to simplify it. It has to be customer oriented and set up to close sales.
Exactly. So we're going to go in the Wayback Machine. If you're not familiar with the Wayback Machine, there is a thing on the internet that lets you look at any website from any point in the past where it has an archived copy.
Well, back to when the darn thing was started.
Exactly. So if we go back to 2011, which is probably the time that was the worst for this particular phenomenon of mine, we were starting to get some really good results from marketing, but I was not comfortable with sales still. I still had a lot of work to do in that area. And if we look at our website as kind of a symptom of my sales philosophy, this is kind of embarrassing. Also a symptom of the times. At that time, everybody who was in search engine optimization was saying you have to have all this crap on your homepage in order to score well in the search engines and score well, be in the first 3 places on Google for your keywords and things like that. So our homepage of our website was trying to be everything to everybody, and we were trying to give away way too much stuff and really confusing the heck out of anybody that visited, right? It was not really clear what our image is. It wasn't really clear what our purpose was, any of that stuff. And it was about us. It was not about our customers. All of that is bad. Okay. So our current website, if we look at that now, is much simpler. We try to be completely obvious. We help aviation companies sell more of their products and services. What can we help? How can we help you today? And we've got a series of questions, reasons that people may be visiting based on our experience of why people would reach out to us. And this comes from experience, but a lot of people feel as they progress in their sales and marketing that they need to add more things. We found that taking things away is actually more powerful than adding more stuff, right? Right. So everything on this site is now different. Everything on this site is simplified. Everything on this site is customer oriented, and everything on this site is designed to lead people down the sales process, right?
Into the pipeline, so to speak.
Into the pipeline. Absolutely. And your sales presentations, whatever they are, whether it's your website, whether it's on marketing materials or other things, or today's focus, of course, is on in-person or teleconference sales presentations, and we're just using the website as kind of a visual of what we mean by that, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So 3 things you can do, and there's 3 things we're going to be talking about today. One is simplify your message, and if there's one thing we want you to walk away with, that is the one thing. But there's a couple of related things that we're going to help you do as well. Number 2 is make it about the customer. So if you're ever in doubt about what to leave in and what to take out, make it about the customer, right? And number 3 is we're going to talk about a 3-step close at the end of every sales presentation that really improves your results with this, right?
Yes.
Right. That's the hard part. I think that's the part that everybody's afraid of. And so they pull punches all the way through their sales presentation because they're afraid of the close. But if you're not afraid of the close, it really frees you up to focus on the customer and do this right. Right? Okay. So here are some symptoms of having lost the prospect. We'll start with this. Start with what to do wrong so that we can tell what to do right. So I'm sure you've heard this in sales presentations, right? Any number of things. We're too busy to think about this now. We need to get the right people together. This is good information. We need to consider it. Or, that seems pricey.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sometimes they're telling the truth, but 80% of the time, that is not what they mean. They don't mean any of those things. What do they mean?
I probably want it, but you haven't convinced me.
Exactly. Dude, WTF. You've overwhelmed this person with too much information, and that is the most common reason for screwing up a sales presentation in the aviation industry. Would you agree, John?
Yes.
Okay. And they will never tell you, dude, WTF, you lost me. I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't understand the words you just said. I don't understand how that applies to me. I don't think this is worth my time because I don't get it. They're never going to tell you any of that. Right?
And really, at the start of most sales presentations, there's a brick wall that goes up.
Mm-hmm.
And what you have to do is to let them understand that you're actually trying to help them, not just make money.
Right. Well, that also has to be true.
Well, yeah.
And that comes from qualifying the customer, being in the room with the right people, and having someone who could actually benefit from your product. So all of that should go without saying, but it doesn't. But
nothing goes without saying.
Nothing goes without saying. Exactly. But you have to be on the same side as this person, and you have to be willing and able to help him understand. And you do that by simplifying your presentation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
As a matter of fact, that happened to me once where we were listening to a sales presentation and the guy said, "Yeah, come over and sit in my chair and take a look at my computer."
Yeah.
In other words, get on the same side of the desk with the guy.
Yeah, that's a physical way that you can do that.
But you need to be able to do it.
Right. Okay, now this is a story about Steve Jobs and his ad guy. Do you want to tell the story or do you want me to tell the story?
You're pretty good at storytelling. Go ahead.
Okay. So Ken Segal was in a brainstorming session with Steve Jobs debating about how many features to include in a Mac commercial. Now, this is one of the early Mac commercials before they had it all figured out, right? So you probably already know that focusing on one idea is best, but for some reason, Steve Jobs was insisting that he wanted to include 5 points.
And his reputation was that he pretty much got what he wanted.
He got his way, exactly. He's really hard to convince of something that he had in his head. So the easy thing to do would be for these ad guys to just say, "Okay, Steve, whatever you say," but they didn't. And this is one of the key reasons I think for Mac's and Apple's success. So Lee Clow, who was another ad guy, basically crumpled up a piece of paper and threw it at Steve Jobs and said, "Here, catch." Steve Jobs said, "Okay," he caught the piece of paper. And then Lee crumpled up 5 pieces of paper and threw them at Steve Jobs.
All at once.
All at once. Exactly.
He didn't catch any of them.
He didn't catch any of them. They're bouncing off his head, they're bouncing on the floor and things. And he says, "Okay, when I threw you 1 piece of paper, that was a good ad. When I threw you 5 pieces of paper, that was a bad ad."
You bet.
Okay, so Steve Jobs, in this one instance, this is the only time in history, and if you know of another time that Steve Jobs didn't get his way, type it into the chat window and let us know. Because this is the only time that I know of that somebody actually won an argument with Steve Jobs, and he told the story later that he was really, really glad that this happened this way because this affected Apple's advertising and their sales presentations and their product launches and everything else
into the future
forever, right?
Still,
even after Steve Jobs isn't with Apple anymore, that's still the case. All right. So a lot of people say the problem is I don't want to dumb down my presentations. This drives me crazy when people say that because you're not dumbing down your presentation. You're not doing this because the people that you're selling to are stupid. You're doing this because you're very unlikely to have an undivided hour of their time. They're going to be checking their phone, if you let them. They're going to be doing a lot of other things. They've got a million things on their mind. Even if they're physically in the same room with you, you still don't have 100% of their attention. They don't have your background. They don't understand the same jargon. They don't understand the same words that you do, and you can't expect them to. So simplifying is simply showing respect for their time and attention. You're making it easy for them. You're not making them work too hard. Would you agree, John?
Oh, yeah.
When somebody gives you a simple sales presentation, do you feel insulted?
Well, let me give you an example.
Okay.
Way back, I used to work for I used to work in the data processing, what they used to call IT.
You don't have to say who you worked
for. At the time, we made presentations to high-level, C-level folks. And when we were briefed on because we had to deal with an operating system on a mainframe, an IBM mainframe. And if the guy asked you how it worked, he didn't really want to know the insides and outsides. So our response to how does it work, depending on the person, would say pretty well. But
it works pretty well.
But if you want to get down to it, it's sort of like a warehouse where you have stuff coming in one side, which is data, and then it's going from the warehouse to a manufacturing plant, and that's moving data. Then it becomes a product, and a product comes out the other side. Well, okay, fine. That's simplifying, because otherwise, to know how the operating system works takes several months of dedicated time in a classroom to figure out. You're not going to tell them.
Well, and most people, when they ask, how does it work? Like, for example, how does your cell phone work? They don't really want to know, how does it work? They just want to know, does it work? And how do I make it work? They want to know the surface answer of that question. They don't want to know the guts. And most salespeople of aviation products and services have this tendency to get into the guts of how it works and tell too much about that. So we need to make sure that we are not falling prey to that and giving too much information, just like I used to do with sales presentations. Okay, so questions about simplifying your message. You can go ahead and type questions into the question box, or you can basically just type them into the question box, or you can raise your hand and we will see what we can do for you.
So how do we know how much to simplify?
Okay, good question. If you are losing people, and we showed you the symptoms of losing people, chances are your presentation is too complex. In fact, almost everybody that we have consulted with could benefit from simplifying their presentations. I don't think we've ever seen one that could not benefit from, there's almost no such thing as too much, other than having one slide and here's the product. Do you want it or not? There has to be a little bit more to it than that, but you want to give one main reason that people would buy your product with some supporting data that's about them, not about you. And we'll talk about the details of that as we come forward. If you still have this question at the end, answer it or ask it again, and we'll answer in more detail. But I think this is going to work itself out in the next few slides here.
Okay. Our product we have to provide a lot of data. How can we do that?
Okay.
Without confusing people.
Okay. So if you have to provide a lot of data for legal reasons or practical reasons, it doesn't have to be in the presentation, right? You can always put that into some kind of a user guide or a welcome kit or something like that, where the data is provided to your customer, but it doesn't have to be front and center. You don't want to dump on them with 20 pages of dense facts and figures. They don't have time or interest in understanding that yet, right?
One could only hope.
One could only hope. Okay. All right, moving on. And once again, you can enter questions at any time, and we will answer them when we come to those question slides. All right. So the main thing about sales presentations is simplifying. And how do you know what to get rid of and what to keep? First of all, the first thing to go is the list of features, right? Because it's not about the product, it's about the customer. When you get in front of a customer, the reason that they are going to buy your product is because it's going to help them do something better. So you really want to be understanding your customer, not necessarily talking about your product, right? Those features might be fantastic, and you may end up talking about them, but only in the sense that they apply to your customer, right? They haven't thought through, okay, you're going to shave, 7 seconds off of every one of these actions. What did that actually do for me? Well, it reduces downtime. It reduces, increases your customer satisfaction. It saves you money, or it helps you make more money, or it helps you look better, or something. It has to do something that applies to that person, because you don't care about 7 seconds, right? You just care about a customer being hung up in your process and giving up and going away because they're being held up, right? So you need to make those connections for them, and we're going to give you some examples of how that works. So the dump truck of features, this is the way most people do, especially technical presentations for aviation products and services, right?
Yes, and that's not just aviation, that's symptomatic of a lot of things.
Exactly. So here's a couple of examples from the real world. I wish we had examples from aviation, but number one, we don't want to badmouth anybody who could become a customer next week. And two, it's not as simple in aviation as it is where we can give you some examples here that everybody is familiar with, because everybody in aviation has kind of a different specialty. So we don't want to get too technical here. Once again, we're trying to simplify, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So here's two products. And this is back in the olden days when people used to have MP3 players before they started just playing music on their phone. But this is a super clean example because we have two products, the iPod Shuffle and the Sony MP3 player. One is clearly, in terms of features, they give you the dump truck of features. Basically, it's got an FM radio tuner. It's got drag and drop from iTunes or Windows Media. The iPod will only work with iTunes. It's got 35 hours of battery life and audio playback and things like that. It's got 16 gig of internal memory and all of that stuff. That stuff is right there on every single ad for the Sony MP3 player. If you look at an ad for the iPod Shuffle, 10,000 songs in your pocket, and that's all they tell you, right? But you don't care about the rest of that stuff in most cases. And they charge almost 3 times as much for that product. Which one do you think sold better?
The iPod Shuffle.
The iPod Shuffle. So it's not about the dump truck of features. It is about the customer. What does the customer want? The customer wants 10,000 songs in his pocket. He doesn't care about the rest of that stuff.
Exactly.
Right? And actually what's really weird is you might think, but he should care about the FM radio tuner. He should care about the fact that you can use this with Windows without having iTunes. He should care about, the memory and other specifications. But the thing is, they did not make that case. They didn't say you can go all day without recharging. They didn't say, you can get your favorite radio stations. They didn't say any of that stuff. So the average person just sees a bunch of words, right? Okay, cool. Here's another example, and this one is a little bit more, a little closer to home for the aviation industry. And this is a video, and you can find this on YouTube. This is Eric, the car guy, spends the better part of 12 minutes trying to explain why he likes SnapOn Tools better than the rest of his tools. And when it comes down to it, it doesn't have a whole lot to do with the function, right? A crescent wrench is kind of a crescent wrench, right?
Yeah, an open end or box end, as you see here, yes.
Exactly. So it's just pretty much a piece of metal that serves a particular purpose. But Snap-on's advertising, basically their slogan is not about the tool. It's about the customer, right? It's the choice of better mechanics. And now this guy, Eric, he goes through and he talks about each of these wrenches and he picks them up and shows you different things. And the only thing that he can really say about the SnapOn tool is that it feels better in my hand, right?
Well, and actually, before all of the marketing they put out there years ago when they first came out with the SnapOn products, a friend of mine bought them. I have to agree, it does feel better in your hand.
Right.
I would prefer to work with those than I would the other ones.
Right. So, the product design is better, but it's not really something that they could explain in terms of tons of features and say it's, we shaved off 3 millimeters off the handle and curved the edges and did all those things. They don't bother with that. They just say it's the choice of better mechanics. And if you have a Snap-on person come to your place of business and try to sell you tools, the first thing they will do is get one in your hand and say it's the choice of better mechanics. And then they shut up and listen to you, to listen to your stories and your situation and, the time that you busted a knuckle doing something because the thing slipped out of your hand. And they let it be about the customer, not about the tool, right? So that's something you can copy from somebody who spent a lot of money figuring this out. They've been in business since 1920. They charge at least twice as much as craftsmen for most of the tools that they sell. And most people agree that they are obscenely expensive, but most people agree that they are the absolute best, right?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. So simpler does not equal easier. Blaise Pascal said, if I'd had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter when he was writing to a friend. And, it was just because most of us do this stream of consciousness thing most of the time because we just don't have time. We're just racing through our day. So when we write an email to someone, we end up running on and people have a tendency to answer the first part of our email and not the last part because we didn't structure it very well. We didn't think about it. We didn't make a lot of design decisions about that message because it was just a off the cuff kind of thing. When we do sales presentations, they should not be run on sentences, stream of consciousness. Nobody has the time or energy to listen to that. And especially if you've gone to all the effort of getting into a room with a CEO of a company who's likely to be a customer, you do not want to waste a second of that time, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, you want to make sure that you have done the preparation to make your presentation simpler and make it about the customer.
I thought Franklin or somebody way back there paraphrased that pretty well too.
Well, this has been attributed to Abraham Lincoln, Benjamin Franklin, a whole bunch of other people. Blaise Pascal said it first. It was probably stolen by many other people or plagiarized, to accuse Benjamin Franklin of plagiarism. But no, seriously, there's a lot of people that's been attributed to, but it's one of my favorite quotes. We use it a lot. Okay, cool. So how do you prepare? How do you make things simpler? For a sales call, we actually have a cheat sheet for that or a checklist for that you can download from our website. If you go to tip sheets or if you go to abci1.com/sales call, you can download that checklist. And we recommend that people spend 15 minutes and one sheet of paper. And John gives me crap about this because I'm kind of a tree hugger. I'm always concerned about, wasting paper and that kind of thing. But this is not a waste of paper. If you're going to make a sales call, you want to spend 15 minutes preparing for it and use one sheet of paper, writing down your notes so that you're all set up for that sales call and you're not going to be thrown by any question that they ask you or by getting their voicemail or any unexpected thing that happens. So every single sales call, and it's about making it about the customer. So if you follow that checklist, it's going to kind of force you into that way of thinking, which is kind of a minor version of what we're going to talk about today. So the sales calls are easier. Sales presentations are a little bit more extended version of the same thing. And the reason is the outcome for a sales call should be an appointment for a sales presentation, right?
Well, at least.
Yeah, exactly. Or at least moving the sales process forward, saying, let's figure out who we would need to invite from your company to a sales presentation and if we should do that on Tuesday or Thursday or whatever, as long as you're making progress in that process. So a sales presentation is kind of the same thing, except more of it, right? So instead of spending 15 minutes, you should spend several hours preparing for a 1-hour sales presentation with an important customer.
Yes.
You should go through several drafts. You would not believe the number of drafts that John and I go through putting together a proposal or a sales presentation for a specific customer. Every single sales presentation. And the outcome is either a sale or progress toward a sale. Some people say, well, what about a no? A no is okay too, but as long as they're giving you a no for the right reasons.
Yes.
And not just because they don't understand you, right? Okay. So how do you prepare for a sales presentation? Do we have a checklist for that? Not really. But this is as close as we can get to a checklist. You want to answer 4 questions in the customer's mind. And these might not be questions that they ask you specifically, but they are questions that they should ask you, or that they're asking you in their head, even if they think it might be rude to say these out loud. So the first one is, why should I listen to you? Why should I spend an hour of my time? I'm hugely busy. I've got a million things to do. I've got a dozen problems. Tell me why this is worth my time. And you should answer that question before you even get in the room. But also, when you do get in the room, you say, we're going to spend an hour together. And at the end of that hour, here's what the outcome should be for you. 2, why should I do business with you instead of somebody else? You should have an answer to that is focused on the customer. 3, what can your product do for me that no other product can do? And once again, these are in your handout, so you don't need to worry about scribbling this down really quickly. If you're trying to do that, you can stop because it's in your handouts. And 4, what can you guarantee me that no one else can guarantee? So this is what it boils down to for your average CEO in business. What problem can you solve for me, and how do I know for sure that it's going to work? And that's really what they want to hear. Would you agree, John? You
Yes.
buy stuff more often than I do.
Well, but you want it. I just have to buy it.
That's true. I tell you what I want, and you go find the right thing to buy.
But yes.
Okay. Cool. So those are the right questions. How do we answer those questions? You need to customize the answers for the specific customer. And here's some of the wording that you might use when you do that. It's helpful for me to actually hear, some examples of what people do to answer these questions. So spending an hour listening and participating in this conversation will be well worth your time, because we're going to save you a lot of time and frustration with your aircraft maintenance. That would be an example of.
It's a nice skeleton answer, but you need to take it and customize it specifically for your intended audience.
Exactly. And if you can say even more specifically, we're going to save you a lot of time and frustration with this specific problem that I know that you're having because of our telephone conversation last week. And you want to get real specific with that. And this needs to be very, very first thing in your presentation or in the first few minutes, so that you make sure that you capture and keep their information, or capture and keep their attention, which is really hard to do. You notice at the beginning of this presentation, I said, you're going to want to close all your other windows and you're going to want to get a pen, because here's what you're going to get out of this presentation. So same thing, just different format. Okay. So to answer that second question, here's an example. Doing business with us rather than our competitors, and you want to name your competitors, you're in a room now, this is not on the web, will provide more timely installation and 24/7 service, or whatever the differences are between your product and service and your customers. You want to make sure that that is fairly concise and close to the beginning of the presentation. Once again, real simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Third thing, unlike the product you're currently using, and you should know that because you've had these conversations on the phone, right?
You have to know your competition.
Mm-hmm. And you'd be amazed how many people don't.
That's correct.
Yeah, unlike the product you're currently using, ours has this additional benefit which will save you,
Whatever.
yeah, or have this benefit for you. You have to once again translate this into what does it mean for the customer? And this is not easy. If this was easy, everybody would be doing it, right?
Well, everybody should be doing it. It doesn't matter what you're selling, even if it's just yourself.
Exactly. And number 4, we have an exclusive guarantee. If you follow these instructions, we promise that our product will work as we say. If not, we'll buy it back. If you can't make that guarantee, you are working for the wrong company, right? Almost everything has a guarantee, real or implicit nowadays, because people will stop payment on the check, or they will stop payment on their credit card, or they will do what they call a chargeback, any number of things if the product doesn't work as advertised. So your product is guaranteed anyway. You might as well
Say it.
say it and take advantage of it. So there is nothing wrong with saying that. It sounds risky, but you're really not taking any more risk than you already are. Every time you sell a product, there is a possibility that the customer is not going to be happy. So that risk is already there. You're just stating it outright.
Mm-hmm.
You'll sell a lot more from doing this than you will get returns.
I mean, we go to places that we buy products and we'll take them back because something was not right about it. And we don't even have a receipt anymore. They just take it back. They do the lookup to make sure you actually bought it there, but that's on them, even though you don't have the receipt. And that's to me, that's just amazing. But they do it.
Right. And we're a lot more likely to shop at those places again, or to buy something else from them, or to allow them the opportunity to solve the problem because they are willing to take it back. And that really goes a long ways toward credibility and trust and everything else. So, guarantees almost can't be overstated as a selling proposition, right? Okay. So in terms of putting all of this together, we put together the typical way of doing this is a slideshow, and we're using a slideshow today. And especially if you're using a teleconference, there are some things that you can do to avoid death by PowerPoint, right?
Yeah, you certainly don't want to do that.
Exactly.
People overdo it.
Right.
Yeah. And with respect to PowerPoint, and I know that she does it sometimes here.
Heaven forbid.
Don't read the words.
Mm-hmm.
But you shouldn't use words anyway when an image will work.
Exactly.
And you need to provide the handouts or whatever so that people don't have to write it down. They can just concentrate.
Right. If they're busy scribbling, they're not listening to you.
And if you have words, emphasize one or two, not the whole paragraph.
Exactly. Sometimes you can't avoid using words, which is fine. But if you can ever substitute an image for words, do that, because images hit a different part of our brain. They process faster, people remember them longer, and so on. So, for example, this dude with the toe tag, you'll probably remember an hour after this presentation. If I just said death by PowerPoint, you'd just think, snicker, snicker, cute little joke, no big deal, right?
Well, Apple is still working toward their stated goal of no keyboard.
That's true. That is true. But, you probably do need to use slides because that's expected and it's traditional. And it often is the very best way to get your point across and to convey information, especially in a teleconference. But you can simplify them a heck of a lot more than most people do. And if you do read the slides, and you might have to, if you've got people who are calling in to a conference, then you do need to describe what's on the slide or read the slide. But I know, John, you've been in a lot of military briefings and things where it is complete death by PowerPoint.
Oh, it's crazy.
They just put up a text slide and read every single word.
Yes, they do.
I can't believe people actually still do that. So, okay, questions about making it about the customer.
So, how do we use the prepared slideshow? We spend a lot of money on a professional slideshow. Do we need to make a new one for every single sales presentation?
Yes, you do. once again, you've invested a lot to get in the room with this particular decision maker. So there is nothing wrong with customizing your slideshow. And even if you have spent a lot of money on a great slideshow and have video clips and sound effects and all that fantastic stuff, that's great. But you do want to go back through it after having seen this presentation and say, you know what can we get rid of? What are we overwhelming our customer with? And if it's a shorter slideshow, it's going to be easier to customize, right? And you're going to want to put your customer's logo in there. You're going to want to put your customer's facts and figures in there. You don't want to waste their time with stuff that's generic. That's probably one of the biggest, I'm going to say, pet peeves of CEOs is that you're wasting their time with generic information that's not specifically tailored to them, right?
Or if it's available and they already know it.
Yeah. Okay,
So,
yeah, go ahead and type questions into the question window, and John's moderating those for us, which is nice. So
how detailed does this presentation need to be?
Okay, you do want to use your customers' data, but you don't want to use details of your own data unless it directly impacts your customer and you can prove it, right? So if they haven't asked about load speed, as an example, then having a bunch of facts and figures and charts and graphs and crap about load speed isn't going to help unless you say this is why it matters to the specific problem that you told me you're having. Right?
Exactly.
Okay. So yeah, details are only useful as they support the customer's questions or problems. Okay. So part 3, we talked about simplifying your presentation. We talked about making it about the customer. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about today is the 3-step close, which is the last thing that you talk about in your presentation, right? Okay. So the 3 steps: 1, summarize the discussion; 2, propose action; and 3, establish the next point of contact. So this is the part that most people stumble on. They get tight in the chest, they get, their heart pounding and everything else going, wow, I think I'm really doing well in this presentation, but now I have to ask for their money, right?
Well, yes.
Okay. Don't worry about it. It's really simple. All you're going to do is sum up what was just said. You're going to propose the next action, and you're going to establish the next point of contact. 3 things. You can remember that, right?
Yeah, well, I've got a caveat here. When you summarize the discussion, a lot of people parrot word for word what was said by the proposed client. And yeah, you got to say what they said, but you need to do it so that it doesn't sound like you're a blithering idiot and all you can do is say exactly what they said, because that irritates a lot of people, and I'm one of them.
Right. Well, you're actually in the perfect demographic of a decision maker in the aviation industry, which is why we like to have you in on these, because you can tell us what drives you crazy.
Yeah, if you can summarize what I said, and you may need to say, you indicated this is a problem. Yeah, okay, fine, I did. Okay, and here's what we're going to do about it.
Exactly. So here's some wording that you can use that hopefully won't drive your customer crazy. So you told us about this problem that you're having, and you told us that it costs this much. Would that drive you crazy, or would that be okay?
Better.
Better?
A lot better.
Okay. So, you want to make sure that they understand that you get it and you were listening, but don't just parrot their words back to them.
Exactly.
Okay.
And there are those sales organizations or training places that say parrot word for word.
Right.
No.
Exactly. Okay. So you told us that you have this problem, and we agreed that this is costing you X amount of money, or is really causing you a problem because you're going to have to hire an extra person to take care of this, or whatever the situation is that was in your presentation or the discussion that you had about this product, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you summarize the discussion, especially the biggest problem from the customer's point of view. Okay, and then you understood how our product will solve that problem for you?
Sure, that'll work.
Okay, and or you understood how this solves for that. And that way you get a chance to restate anything that wasn't understood. And you want to, again, be as simple as possible, and you know now how to look for symptoms of having lost the customer. Okay, next thing, propose action. Here's what should happen next. We should get together to finalize the details of this. We are going to need X information. You are going to need agreement from this person in your company, whatever the next steps are. Here's what should happen next.
And you need to know that, by the way.
Exactly.
You don't wing that one either.
No. This is conversation. This is not dictated, right? Okay. And then the next thing is you establish the next point of contact. So based on that, next Thursday at 10 a.m., we'll touch base to finalize the documents, or based on what we have agreed, we'll meet a week from today to present this to your decision maker higher up in the food chain or whatever needs to be done here. So those are your 3 steps. Summarize the discussion, propose action, establish next point of contact, right?
Yep.
With some suggested wording for each of those. And this works really, really well, having done a ton of these things. This doesn't make you nervous. This doesn't make them nervous. It's all, about being respectful of their time and being respectful of their decisions, right? Okay. So questions about the 3-step close?
Let's see. Should you propose the next action or ask the prospect what he wants to do next? Well, the answer to that one is you do it. You never relinquish control.
Okay. I would actually say there is a caveat to that.
No, and what you do is you give him 2 alternatives so he can choose from those. Okay. If he wants a third, he'll suggest it.
You can do that. You can also say, are we agreed that we should proceed or not? And if not, then they have to give you a reason why they're not proceeding. So if you're getting resistance, you can address that head on right there.
No, you already established the next point of contact. You're trying to the next point of contact.
Right.
Not whether you should proceed or not. You already figured that out.
Okay, well, we're talking about propose action, so that's step 2. So
no, we're not.
Yeah. Should you propose action or should you let them propose action? And if you want to say, what do you think should be the next step based on what we discussed here today? I think that's perfectly legitimate.
I mean, that depends on your interpretation. I interpreted it
that's
differently,
all right.
But that's okay.
All right.
So what if the prospect says no?
What if the prospect says no? After all that, they said no? It does happen, and that's fine too. As long as they are saying no for the right reasons. You may discover in this process, and it's perfectly legitimate to discover in this process, that it's not a good fit for your customer.
Yeah, better find out now than to spend more time and resources and money trying to sell them later.
Exactly. So if they say no because they don't understand what you're talking about,
fix that.
That's a different situation. And you can actually even ask them directly. If they say no, you can say, let me just be sure. Are you saying no because this is not a good fit, or are you saying no because I didn't explain it well enough?
Or because you found out it's pricier than you thought, or whatever.
Exactly. So, there's nothing wrong with asking a question if somebody says no. I wouldn't let it go at that. Exactly. unless you're real clear. And if you're real clear, that's great. This is what this is all about, is clarity of conversation. All right, so here's your checklist. You want to simplify your message. You want to make it about your customer, and you want to use the 3-step close, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So if you got all that, what I'm going to suggest is that you go take our trivia quiz. We actually give away a $10 coffee card, and if you're in this webinar, you're going to ace this pretty well. You're going to get some questions right, and for every question right, you get a chance to win the $10 coffee card. So you don't have to get them all right to get a chance to win. So that's a lot of fun, and it is at abci1.com/trivia.
Which ought to be on there.
But abci1.com/trivia. So go answer those questions, and it will be fun. So coming up next week, we're going to do our members only webinar, where we're going to work on your sales presentations and more specific examples of how to make this work. So if you're interested in that and you're not currently a member, you can be one by next week. Give me a call and or check out our website about our insider circle, and we'll talk some more about that. So I did tell you that there was something that we were going to offer at the end of this webinar, and that is our sales presentation workshop. And what that is basically having us work with you on your sales presentation to simplify it, to personalize it, and to help you with your closes. And we do not only your presentation materials, but we also rehearse it with you to make sure that you're getting the very best chance of closing those sales, right? So, and I'm going to do something that's going to drive you crazy. You know, of course, you worked hard to land an appointment with a busy decision maker with the interest, resources, and authority to buy your product. How do you ensure the best chance of leading to the right decision? And I do that because some people are listening and not watching. So
of course you are.
The outcomes of this workshop are, of course, a more compelling presentation, a detailed preparation checklist of what to customize for each prospect. So you're going to have specific slides that you're going to want to go in every time you do this presentation and fill in the blanks to make sure that this is customized for each of your prospects. We're going to include strategy notes. Here's where you're going to run into some trouble with this, and here's some ways to solve that. We're going to talk about objection response strategies. What responses are you getting? If you're getting a no for the same reason every time or for a similar reason, we can help you get around that objection or figure out how to solve for that objection, or pick your prospects more carefully so that you're not going to get that objection.
Exactly.
There's lots of ways to do that. We're going to do your slides and also your printed materials so that those will be professionally done and are going to look a whole lot better, and you'll have a lot more confidence in giving those sales presentations, right? So how do you get there? You go to abci1.com/salespreso, Preso. We'll have the URL on the next slide, but this is what it looks like. It's basically just an order form. It's and it tells you all of what you get there. The mini questionnaire, 2 or 3 consultations, a review of your current sales presentation, or we create it from scratch. So that's what you get, and we will take questions on the sales presentation workshop or on anything else having to do with marketing for the rest of the time. It looks like we've got about 8 minutes left. So any questions that you have, or we'll end early and give you time to go get a drink before your next meeting, right?
Well, you say 8 minutes, but the machine says 14 down here. What's up with that?
Oh, goodness. That's
You're
crazy.
right. It is only 8 minutes, but the gizmo says...
I'm going to have to fix that. So let's see if I can do that without screwing it up. Wouldn't that be something? Okay, so you figure out if there's questions, and I'll see if I can straighten out the timer.
Of course you will. Yeah, you did straighten it out. And yes, there are questions.
Oh, good. If you do have questions, go ahead and type them into the window, and we will get to those as in order, hopefully, more or less.
So, here's a good one.
Okay.
If the presentation is supposed to be customized, how is it going to help to have you build one for us?
Okay, very good question. And I know, some of you have invested a lot of money in sales presentations that someone has done for you, that maybe have real polished graphics and video clips and things. And you've invested a lot of money and you don't want to throw those out. Same thing with us. We're going to build a very professional presentation for you that you're going to feel really good about, that's going to look really good. But there are going to be some spaces in that presentation where you're going to fill in the blanks with things for your customer. We're going to recommend that you use your customer's logo or your prospective customer's logo, that you're going to use some specific facts and figures from their situation, depending on what kind of product you have and what problem it solves. You really do need to relate this to your customer. So we're going to teach you, we're not just going to build this for you and throw it at you, right? We're going to build this for you, and we're going to do 2 or 3 rehearsals with you for different types of customers that you have, so that you feel confident customizing this yourself and presenting this yourself. Or if you decide to be a client with us in our insider circle, you can use your office hours to have us customize it for you every single month for a different customer, or you can buy additional office hours from us, and we will customize it for you professionally and do professional graphics every single stinking time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're going to make it work for you one way or another. Once again, your satisfaction is guaranteed, as always, and we're going to make sure that it suits your needs.
Well, the whole idea is to do it enough times so that you are comfortable doing it yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, we can't be in the room with you, or we probably shouldn't be in the room with you while you're delivering your sales presentations, elbowing you in the ribs every time you screw something up. So that's why we do the rehearsals and make sure that you're comfortable.
So, do you provide ongoing consultation to help prepare for future sales presentations?
Good question. And that probably came in right before I answered that question.
Yes.
But yes, we do. That's available either through our Insider Circle program, where you get ongoing consultations with us. You get office hours, and you can use those for anything you like, including preparing and rehearsing your sales presentations. That's one of the things that people like to do with their office hours. But in general, this product in particular, we just build it for you and teach you how to use it and teach you how to customize it so you can run off on your own and do it, or you can have us do it for you every time.
And the last one so far, does this work for companies outside the aviation industry?
Yes. Okay. Sometimes we have people who are slightly outside or even kind of far outside the aviation industry. And you'd be surprised what is included in the aviation industry. We've had hazardous waste people. Airplanes produce, toxic waste, and it needs to go somewhere. So there's a lot of industries that are related to aviation that we've worked with. And, airport authorities, real estate, construction, there's lots of things that are related in some way. Our expertise is having the vocabulary to be really credible with aviation people, but there's also a lot of other industries that John or I have worked with, or we actually work with you to find a really good writer to make sure that we've got some good credibility for the business-to-business relationships in whatever industry that you're in. So that we do take care of for you and make sure that that we solve it. If you're in something that's completely unrelated, we will tell you, you know what, we don't know anything about your industry, so we're not going to touch this. And if that's the case, we can have that conversation and decide, see if there's somebody that we can refer you to that would be a better fit. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, cool. If that's all the questions, we'll go ahead and end early and give you 2 minutes and 9 seconds back to do whatever you like before your next meeting. So is that it?
That's it.
That's it. Okay. Well, have a great afternoon, and thank you for joining us. And we hope that you will be much more successful in your sales presentations in the future.
And we'll talk to you next time.
Absolutely.
You could.